This is Tonight. I'm Bruce Whitfield and welcome to the biggest building site in Africa. Well, certainly it feels like it. We're in the Sandton CBD. This is where billions of rand are being poured into the ground in terms of bricks and mortar, where head offices are centering their businesses on Sandton, lawyers' offices, consultants' offices, and even Sasol moving into the Sandton CBD. It's changing the landscape permanently. Just down below from where we stand was once a beautiful, well, if you like, Mark Tudor, it was beautiful development where people lived and brought up their children. Now Old Mutual is going to build something like a 15-story building, 50,000 square meters of space. I also hear that Edward Nathan Sonnenberg, one of the law firms that is moving offices, is also going to be moving in here. Well, two people who are very familiar with this part of town, David Seinker, who is an investor in Sandton and a developer himself, and also Craig Hean, the managing director of Jones Lang LaSalle. 40 years ago, people were trying to grow mealies here. What's happened?
I think it was mealies and horses. I think what spurred it off is in about 1968 or 1969, they announced the development of Sandton City, and I think the whole plan was really to develop a new city around this retail node. And I think that they opened their doors in 1973, and the rest is history. It started with some commercial development, and I think it's just gained momentum. And what we're seeing now is the sort of evolution, or maybe the maturity of a city that's coming into its own.
Now, you speak to Jack van der Merwe. Apologies for the noise, by the way, really. There are people doing real work down here and building things. There's hammering and drilling and trucks moving out backwards and forwards, cement mixers and machines going in reverse. Jack van der Merwe, the guy who runs Gautrain, which could very well be the savior of Sandton, tells me that 40 years ago, the council of Sandton, in their wisdom, didn't want street lights, and they also didn't want big intersections and big roads in this area. Today, we curse those esteemed high-profile individuals, don't we?
Absolutely. I mean, that's probably one of the big challenges facing Sandton, is the congestion of perhaps the lack of big intersections that come in. I think there's significant initiatives underway though, and you say that the Gautrain might be the savior of Sandton. I think absolutely, but it's probably at this point in time only bringing about 16% of Sandton's daily commuters into the suburb. 60% of that, 60% of the other visits are coming through private vehicle use. And that's an element that people are going to have to get used to changing. Absolutely.
Public transport hopefully will be the future. Also, one looks at the road infrastructure, the traffic lights. There is a big project underway, is there not? Because the city of Johannesburg, I think, has thrown up its hands in fear and trepidation to say, you want to have traffic lights that are synchronized? Do it yourself.
Yeah, maybe a bit unfair to say that the city of Joburg is throwing up their hands. I think
well, that's what it feels like when you're stuck in the traffic jam.
Big initiatives in terms of the whole public transport infrastructure, which we can talk about ad nauseum. But in terms of the traffic lights, you're quite right. I think the city of Joburg has said they've got other plans that they need to pay attention to over the next 3 years within the node, not sort of through the greater Johannesburg region. But I think the property developers and the landowners in Sandton and the CID, the City Improvement District of Sandton, which is funded by the landowners, they're the ones who've taken the initiative, and they're putting together a massive re-synchronization of the traffic lights, which I think is going to do a lot for the flow around Sandton and certainly getting in and out at busy times.
It can't come a moment too soon. David Seinker, you're part of the problem because you're bringing more bodies into Sandton. The old Cell C building, which is about 1.5 kilometers that way, where Cell C was being run from before they moved out towards Midrand. You've split that up into all sorts of exciting ideas and bringing hundreds more people into the CBD. Thank you so much for that.
No problem. Yeah, so we've launched a property called the Business Exchange, which is serviced offices. And some of the advantages for the residents there will be the service flexible office offering, and they'll be able to also utilize and access other resources that we're bringing into these businesses and into the Sandton area, which is our business networks and other investors.
But the trend of flexible offices, as opposed to other guys at EY and Edward Nathan Sonnenberg's and Old Mutual who are building here, and the multiple lawyers' offices which are going up across town, and Sasol just near Weirder Valley on the other side there. Flexible offices, who's that aimed at?
So it's primarily targeted at the SME market. However, there is also a big component of international companies that are looking to break into Africa, and as Sandton is the place to be when you're trying to trade in Johannesburg and the rest of Africa. well, certainly it is a gateway into Africa, let's say. The international corporates like the flexible offering. They don't have to commit to long leases. These guys signing here are looking at 5-10-year leases. So the international companies coming in here, yeah, they like the flexible, shorter service type of offering.
And how much uptake have you got?
Phase 1 will be finished by the end of January, and it's been very good. There's generally a bigger demand. We're seeing it internationally too. There's a bigger demand for the flexible service office space. So yeah, the uptake's been very good, and we hopefully going to finish off the 2,000 square meters within a period of 6 months.
Okay, that's one side of the story, of course, but then there's the corporate ego, the brand. You've got to be seen to be near your clients. You've got to be seen to be in the powerhouse of Africa. And that's really what is driving so many of these companies, is it not, Craig, to develop these extraordinary properties, which 5 years ago, Nedbank, for example, balked at developing residential and mixed-use development at 135 Rivonia.
Yeah, I think the corporate address is key. I mean, if you're a big corporate, this is the right place to be for you. There's no doubt about it. Developing big, fancy new buildings, yeah, it's got a lot to do with the facade. There are other drivers as well, though. I think that what we've seen here is probably buildings that are sort of reaching the end of their usable lives.
What is a usable life for a Sandton building? The Standard Bank building, which is just down the road from Discovery, which Discovery's moving out of into new space after 15 years. Where is it, 15, 20 years for a building in the Sandton CBD?
Yeah, look, I mean, it could be. That sounds about right, about 20 years. I think some of the drivers are the way companies are thinking about what a building is delivering. Real estate costs are becoming so expensive, not only in terms of rental, so it's important that new building envelopes are being developed to allow efficient use of space, but also things like electricity. I mean, if I just had to single out one sort of consumable charge, these older buildings with less energy efficient lighting, less energy efficient air conditioning, perhaps not using natural light to the best of the building's ability, all's contributing to a massive electricity bill. With the way the prices are going and the reliability of electricity these days, buildings are being developed much more sustainably, and you're getting a huge reduction in actual consumable charges in these new modern buildings.
So rather than adapt buildings, we'll just simply knock them down and start again from scratch.
Yeah, that could be an option.
That's what is happening, though, isn't it?
Well, in many instances, I think there might be another trend in a couple of these older buildings that you might see, with an increase in residential demand, trying to create a live, work, play type of environment, which is sort of not only in desire here in South Africa, but right around the world. A couple of these older buildings do have potential, I would say, to get converted to residential.
But what is it about our attitude towards bricks and mortar in South Africa, where we just obliterate and rebuild when we look at it, David? Because we look at the big cities of the world, the New Yorks, the Parises, the Londons of the world. People are going into offices that are hundreds of years old. They've been adapted for modern use. Are we just more fickle?
Yeah, look, I think if you look at the inner cities around the world, there's a lot of rejuvenation that's going on. If you look at our inner city here, we're almost replicating what's been done in New York and other major cities in the world.
Because you're involved in the Joburg CBD
yes, I've
as
been
well as
involved
Sandton.
before. Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
So, look, I think Sandton presents a different opportunity, although it's not been completely rejuvenated. It's been, built up from scratch sort of 40, 50 years ago. But, people want to be in the Sandton financial hub, and that's attracting a lot of interest, particularly from all the attorney firms that seem to be making a lot of money at the moment. So,
yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you live nearby, you live in a suburb where it's green and leafy still. Traffic is going to be a problem. So you talk about live, work, play. Are we going to see buildings like this wonderful structure, which I think is owned by Growth Point, where CNBC is headquartered? Does this one get knocked down? Do we expect to be evicted by our landlords? Or do we see this converted perhaps into apartments at some point, like so many of the old buildings in the Joburg CBD are doing?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, it's a bit of a how long is a piece of string debate. Quite interesting, though, is that almost 50% of people who work in Sandton live within a 10-kilometer radius of Sandton. So it's not like there's I think with public transport costs or not using your own vehicle, there's going to be an increase in demand in the residential space. People working are actually not living too far away anyway.
So here we are then in the Sandton CBD. How unique is what is going on here with noisy machinery and equipment? It feels like the world is going into yet another office and commercial development phase.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure it's unique at all. I think it's actually quite exciting to see. And then about 1988, a very similar thing happened in Canary Wharf in London. You know, taking old docklands and converting them into what is now a very, very similar sized office and retail node to what we're seeing in Sandton. In fact, there are other similarities you can draw from it. They've got similar expansion plans over the next 10 years. They've got the same amount of people coming in. They've got the same amount of people that are going to be coming in 10 years. And their main challenge, how do we get people in and out?
But they've got it worked out. They've got that public transport thing nailed. It may be congested, it may be crowded, particularly at rush hour, but it works a lot better than what we got.
At the moment, agreed. But they had the same challenges at the birth of Canary Wharf as we've got now. And I think that if your viewers were worried about what's going to happen to Sandton, I would say be worried if there were no plans in place to improve the public transport. I can confidently say that there's significant plans in place from both the City of Joburg and the landowners here to solve that transport issue.
Okay, now the big question is, how do we make money out of this? There are old townhouses here, there are old townhouses there, there are old townhouses all over the place. Complexes like the one, the mock Tudor building called Shadrian Place that was here, that all mutual obliterated. Is it too late to go and buy one of these townhouses and leave it empty for 5 years and cash in later?
I think if you're a residential property developer or investor, you know, the timing's definitely right for the Sandton area. And you know, areas like Weirdo Valley, Chislehurst, and possibly people are going to have to provide more residential accommodation. There's quite a high-rise building going up here above Mushroom Park, I think called the Metropolis. So yeah, it's definitely a good time for residential, and there's definitely a big need for more space in that.
I do love the fact that there's a high-rise development going up in Mushroom Park, because that's precisely what is happening in Sandton. The place is literally mushrooming. To Craig, David, thanks very much for coming in. That's been Tonight with Bruce Whitfield in a mushrooming Sandton. I do like the fact that we've got Mushroom Park, which is growing from the roots up. Well, watch the Sandton CBD. There are plans in place to get the public infrastructure, to get the sewerage out and the people in, and also to get the traffic sorted, and of course do things like Gautrain and the expansion projects there. There are plans in place. So as you sit in traffic for the next 3 years while those plans come to fruition, rest assured, it'll all get better. They assure me. Good night.